bare wood supply. All right, so let's look into the basics of this. So I'll just reiterate briefly what I normally do, which is we got the tools, we got the pattern, we've transferred the pattern via a metal stylus. It leaves an indent in the wood, and then after you've done that, you just trace it in with a standard Mark I pencil. Then you get this, and what I did was I used the cut saw bit to cut around the entire outer edge, and then I removed it with a mallet. You can remove it by carving as well, or any number of ways, but seems to be the fastest for me. Just chip it all off. So you get it down to this point, and we have plenty of room to work. So basically what I'd like to start with is to define the depth around the neck of the bag. We know that the bag is cinched up via a rope, and it's going to be larger here and larger here and thinner here. So what I'll do is we'll start here. We'll start with a skew chisel, and it is a Schaaf number 1S 8mm. So I'll just use the bottom edge of the skew chisel so that I can still see the movement across the wood and the line also. So let me see if I can move you a bit closer. So slightly closer there. Maybe a little closer here as well. There we go. Now we got you in there. Now, right, we will start with the bottom of the skew chisel, and we will just head across on the line of the rope. You can only get so much depth by pressing into the wood, so don't overdo it and just wear your hand out. We'll also do the top portion of the rope. And by using the bottom, we can still see the line as we thrust forward. Now that we've completed that, what we want to do is create a bit of room in there. We'll leave the rope alone, but we'll dig into the wood, creating that narrow neck. I'm just going to use a standard chisel, one that's sharp, one that's comfortable, one that I've used many times. And we'll just cut in there and get some depth in there. Turning it, and the same on the other side. I'm just flicking it out of there once it's been cut. That's all that is. Just try to shore it up a bit here, get it all in the same cut marks. Alright, so now that you can see that, we've started to create the depth of this. I'm actually going to take it down a little bit further, so I'm going to go back in there, the same skew chisel, and just do what I just did again. Note that I'm using the dominant non-dominant hand carving method, which is to I'm holding the chisel in my dominant hand, which is my right hand, and I'm using it for thrust and power. I'm using my non-dominant hand to guide and steer the tool. And if you do it opposite, so that you don't have to keep turning the wood, then it's also just as safe as long as you hold and do the same thing. So dominant, non-dominant, I'm still just going to hold it. And now I go back to the chisel and remove again. And now I'm just going to put in a little bit of contour and shaping. We know that the artwork shows us that it is certainly narrow going down and going up, but it also shows all these little wrinkles and folds. So I'm just going to go up from a higher point here, like here, which is here. And I'm going to cut in depth in this area. And then I'll do the same over here in this area. I am going against the grain because my wood is horizontal grain today, but as long as your tools are sharp, you should be okay. And if they're not terribly sharp, you can always go with the grain. You just have to make shorter moves like this. If it's sharper, just cut it right off from the get-go. Just putting in a little bit of shape. And redraw some lines. All right, so we have a little bit of shape. It's got a shallow groove here, shallow groove here. Obviously, there's a lot to do up here. Let's go ahead and start to shape this one now too a little bit. We're just going to take off the harsh edge and round it, just like a ball or a vase or a bottle of some nature. We're just going to round it off to the edge. First, we'll just take off a bunch of the side material. You can get a lot of wood removed really quickly by doing it this way. As long as you're using the dominant, non-dominant hand method, then you can just stay with it. One of the key points to remember is that when you are using this method, that your non-dominant hand never stays in one place. So if your tool is moving and your non-dominant hand is not moving, that is extremely dangerous. Do not do that. It is really of paramount importance that if you're moving the tool, then your non-dominant hand is moving with the tool. Now the other side. So regardless of the way I'm holding the tool, my non-dominant hand always moves with the tool. Just do our basic redraw here. And then from here, let's go ahead and round these edges here and here. If we cut like this right here, we can separate the top of the bag from the rope. So you can see here that I'm moving the tool with the contour that it's sitting on right now. A lot of people tend to think it's just a bunch of straight carving in just the right places, but in a lot of cases you're trying to cut as you follow contour that you're moving on. You can do lighter cuts to make it easy and go across the entire plane, or you can take off much larger hunks. Alright, so now we have some good depth at the neck, and we have the rope completely sticking out still, and we can remove that at any time. But let's go ahead and move towards some of the more difficult portions, which is the opening of the bag itself. So the opening of the bag itself can be done in many different ways. What you can do is you can look at the artwork And you can see that the artwork shows that the bag opening on this side here is at a plane that's going away. So we could just cut that entire plane right there, flat and away. Of course, that does a couple things. One being that as soon as you do cut that all away, going in the right direction, and you set an entire flat plane over that area, it removes all of the artwork. And in this case, there's not a lot of artwork, but it is contoured, so a lot of people don't like to remove the artwork. So what I tend to try to do is show one way and then the other way. So first off, what we'll do is we'll cut in with a skew chisel all of the lines that we currently have that have further depth. So let's look at it this way. Behind this line here, meaning on this side, so behind this line here, there's depth because it goes into the bag opening is open and it's further away. And behind this line here, same, on top, same, this line, same, and then this line, same. Now, we also know that behind this line, there's this portion that is deeper here as well. And then behind this line here, there's depth over here, but it's less than this. So we're not going to worry about this one or this one just yet. Let's do this area and this area. Let's cut that in with a little bit of pressure from the skew chisel. Now you can see what I'm doing here is I'm using the opposite side of the skew chisel. Normally I do it this way so that I can just take the entire cut like this and follow the line, lifting up at the end. But if you do it with just the forward facing tip, you can be a lot more precise with the amount of depth that you get and the area that it's covering. Okay, so now what we have is this area much deeper than all these other areas. Let's go ahead and cut in this portion here. And let's remove that just so that we can see what it looks like. In many cases, it's important to let your mind's eye see what's going on before you get too involved with just cutting away a bunch of material. So I often just cut those little pieces in there and then go and have a look by removing just a bit to see, yes, that is the depth that I thought was present, and now it's much clearer. So what I'm going to do here is, like I said before, I'm going to make a plane. I'm not making a plane out of everything there, but I will make a plane out of this portion here. Okay, pardon me. So now we have a little bit of depth on this back area here, showing us a tiny bit of what we want from this area in here. So now what we want to do is go even deeper. And what we'll do to do that is we know that it's actually deeper here than it is here, because the wave shows us that there's actually a bit of opening there. So it's higher here and lower here. It's lower here as well. So what we can do is we can just go in there and start cutting that away. But I think it's better to go ahead and cut in this portion first, so we can get a better understanding of everything that we want to achieve back here. So let's do that. Okay, so now we're going to make some real depth in all of these areas. I'm going to go back and reset stop cuts. And cut some more depth. Okay, so now we have some depth. So now we have some depth, and we can see part of what we're trying to achieve here. So we have depth here, but we don't have any depth here, or even here. So let's go ahead and start with this one first. We're just going to cut along here. And on this side, we're going to cut extremely lightly. It's really just going to be a slight cut into the wood. And over here, we'll have more depth. You can do that with a gouge by just pressing in. You can do it with your skew chisel or any number of chisels. This is a very small area to cut, so the skew chisel is slightly more difficult. I can use a smaller skew chisel, which is helpful. And from there, what we're going to do is we're going to just cut straight in. And once we cut straight in and get a little bit of depth in there, we can then take stock. Go, okay, it's not correct, but it does look right in where the depth is supposed to occur. So now that we have that, we can certainly straighten it up, and by doing that you can kind of just shave it off the top, trying to match it with the plane that we tried to start creating over here. This will all start to match at one point, but right now let's go ahead and then take this one, just like we did here. Let's take this portion out. Less here, more here. And get a little more skew chisel madness in there. Redefine the stop cut. Alright, so now we have some depth here, we have some depth here. Let's go create some depth over here. Okay, so we want more depth here, less depth here. Putting more pressure on it now as I'm heading toward the bottom. And now we're going to use our gouge again to just cut in there. Okay, so now we have these depths put in place. Let's do this one over here. This one here is a little bit easier because we can see that it's flat. I mean, technically it's leaning that way a bit, but we can just go ahead and cut it straight away. And we can put depth in there as well later. We know that we'll have, this will be the high point here, but one of the strange things that one of the things, it's not strange, but one of the things that we haven't done on this side, or even this side, is that this bag is rounded on top, right? So we do have to take off this edge. So let's do that, and then we'll have to redraw our lines. Sorry, you can't see right now. Let me just hack that edge off real quick. And now we'll round this a bit. We do have an portion right here that comes up slightly higher and then comes down and around again, but because it's slightly higher here, that means that there's a bit of a trough in there. It's low here, showing that there's a line. So I kind of did that backwards, but there's a line here showing that it's higher, and a trough here showing that we have a divot in there. So we can go ahead and cut that in. We're not really at the stage where we're putting a whole bunch of contour in, but this will help a little bit. Our mind's eye see what we're trying to achieve. All right, now here is an interesting area because we have a lot of depth in there. In here we have a lot of depth, but it's kind of the opposite of what we did over here because we're trying to see the depth over here in this area. So we have this small section here that we cut a small line, a very mild cut. And so we're going to have to follow that cut. First of all, let's go ahead and clean this a bit. Okay, so now what we want is to note our lines again. We have a line going here. We have this one here. We have some contour here. We have some more contour here. But then we have a major cut in here. So this area here is going to is obviously going down at this moment, but what we want to do is cut directly into the wood right here to create a bit of a wall here. Now this is thicker, this section here is thicker than the top or the thickness of the bag, but we need that depth right now in order to keep it together so that later when we do detail we can then thin it out to the actual thickness of the bag. So what we want to do now is go ahead and cut this portion in. We're just going to go straight into the wood, which allows us to keep this section between here and here thick and strong. And then we're going to lighten it along this section here, but I'm not going to go straight into the wood now. I'm going to actually angle it a bit. So I'm going to go at around a 45. Very light on this upper section. To there. And now I'll remove some of that depth slowly. And now we know that we have kind of like the ones we did here and here we know that we have that same type of cut right here. So we're going to cut that in with our skew chisel, again, using the bottom, since it's just a straight line, and we're just going to cut straight down into the neck of the bag. So we're just going to try to remove a little bit of the debris that's in here and follow our line. And that's pretty much the extent at which I can press into the wood and get any noticeable depth. So now I'll go back with the gouge and I'll remove those areas slowly so that I don't break any portion of that lip there. And then I can go back with a skew again and just remove some of the debris. Now, is it at the depth we need? No, it's not. But the cut has been made, and now that the cut has been made, we can go back at any time and just deepen it. So you can see here that we've kind of created everything that we need to. Let me just fix this one up real quick. Okay, so now you can see that we've created all the cuts that we need in order to take it deeper, refine the depth, round it up, and make it look more like a free-flowing, fabric opening that's been cinched closed. So at this point, I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to move down to the rope, and I'm going to cut it to, I don't know, approximately 1/8 of an inch above the depths that are currently there. So let's do that. Alright, so now that we have that depth there, we'll want to have it approximately the same amount of depth on the sides. They're higher on the sides because the bag is going away. So let's just go ahead and round it so that we can get the same depth uniformly in all of those areas. And on this side, and if you're wondering why I switch between forward cutting and reverse cutting, it's because when I'm working with a much larger piece of wood, it's not so easy to just turn wood when I'm working on a giant piece. So I've gotten used to cutting one way and not touching the wood, and then just cutting the other way. And I've devised this method to keep me safe and anyone around me. So it's really quite a good method to use if you're relief carving. Alright, just going to do a quick redraw here. And that's all that is. Just a quick redraw so I can get my lines back in there strongly. Just a small skew chisel. Push that down in there again. just going to clean this edge up here. And round it a bit, just like a rope is round. Taking out some of the debris. The skew chisel is really a great tool for these tight fitting areas. Okay, so now we have that. We've rounded off. It's too large here to here, so you'll have to eventually determine the actual thickness that you want for the rope, cut it in, and cinch up all areas around it. Let's go ahead around the bottom of the bag. So we're going to take our, actually we're going to use a fishtail now. It's a 7F, and I'm just going to use the opposite side so that I can easily remove the harsh cornered edge here. It just removes it pretty quickly and takes it off. If you're in the right place where you're pulling towards you, it'll make a great cut. If you're on the side, it's going to be a little more difficult because you've already rounded a bit. So now I'm just going to hack it off. This method allows me a lot of strength to put into the cut because I can only move it so much, and I can press in with both the power hand and also the guiding hand. same here. And now let's start to round the bag. So we're just going to follow the contour that's in place and turning the tool as I hit the edge. Have this section here that goes up in to the bag, and you'll want to make this section down here super round, so you're going to be cutting off a lot more, at least from around here down into the bag, the bottom of the bag there. So from here, put a little more energy into this section. So now I'm going to start to do a little more definition on this. So right here, we'll start right here. Right here we have a good contour coming in and up and down again. So it goes up here, and then it goes away, up here, and it goes away this way. So let's try to contour this section here based on this contour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut in here. I'm going to try to match the flow here, and also cutting down into the neck. So we know that we have it higher here because this is coming down into here, lifting the bag. and we have it higher here because it's coming down and lifting the bag. So we know that right here, which is exemplified by this artwork here, that there's a trough in there. So we need to cut that in, and we are going to use a different chisel. Where is it? Here's a good one. We'll use this one. It has a nice perfect sweep for this cut here. Give me a second, this needs to be sharpened. Should do it. Alright, let's go back in here. Ooh, that's much nicer. Okay, so now we have that divot in there. And what we can do now is to start to recognize at what plane does this section sit on. So we know that it has to go down. We know that this is down, and it's kind of matching, or at least it's heading toward the plane we wanted it to sit on earlier. And that does help us because everything else has to match it to an extent. We know that the bag goes every which way at the top, but it does flow together. So we know that this is off here, not matching this. We know that this here is supposed to join this, and then as soon as we cut this, this will be off. And as soon as we cut this, this will be off. So we'll have to start to match them at some point. So let's take this and start to match it with that edge there. You'll see that our depth starts to disappear when we start cutting it because we're just, cutting it away. But the way we did it allowed us to keep the artwork intact while we cut into it. Now we're going to cut here, try to match it. And some of our depths will of course go away as well. But having done it the way we did it allows you to go back in and go, oh, okay, well, not only can I see from the artwork, but this depth will allow me to redraw. And like we did over here, we must, let me try to get a good tool, we must maintain this upper edge here. if we just cut it away, it will disappear, one, and two, we won't have anything to clean later. For example, when we set the edge on it, it is the top of the bag. But if you cut it away, the top of the bag will become whatever's left, and it will drop, and you'll have to reset your depths again. So the way we did it helped us to maintain everything while keeping it fresh in our mind how to recreate it. So now that we have this cut here, and we have this cut here, and we have this cut here, all we need to do is go into the suitable area, which is, for example, here, and recut it. And then go to here and recut it. And then here. And recut it. So it's not perfect, those cuts I made, but you know exactly where they're supposed to be now. So it's just a matter of going back in there and creating the depth you want. Okay. Alright, so you can see that by creating the artwork first, contouring the pattern, following the lines, looking for the depth, noting that, and then cutting it in with your skew chisel. Just your mild cuts. You know, some of them are deep, like here. Some of them are light here, deep over here, light here, so on and so forth. You cut those in and create your stop cuts. Then you can slowly go in and remove little bits of where it's really deep, and just let your mind's eye see what you want to see. Once you've got these really set in there, then you can go back at any time and work on it further, because there's no real challenge to it at the point where you got to figure out planes and angles and stuff like that. So to start it all, just go and put in stop cuts around the areas that you know that are absolutely required to cut, and start to remove little pieces of it until your mind's eye starts to really recognize what you're doing. All right, so that's pretty much it for today. I'll try to do another tutorial like this in the next couple of weeks, where we're doing some more fabric looking like wrinkles and folds, if that's what you guys want. You guys got to tell me though. So thanks a lot, and we will carry through this again on Sunday if I have time on Instagram. Same time. Thank you. Bye.